Malik ran down the familiar sidewalk, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders as he hummed a tune. The crisp afternoon air filled his lungs, the sun hanging low, casting long shadows over the suburban neighborhood. It was just another ordinary day, until he heard it. A faint, desperate whimper. Malik stopped in his tracks, his heart quickening. He turned his head, scanning the area. The street was quiet, empty. The sound came again, this time clearer, a soft, pitiful cry drifting from a nearby alley. His curiosity overpowered his hesitation. Carefully, he stepped toward the alleyway, peeking inside. Old wooden crates, rusted metal scraps, and discarded bricks lined the narrow space between two buildings. But it wasn't the mess that caught his attention. It was the small, trembling puppy trapped beneath a collapsed pile of debris. Its tiny body quivered, its paw pinned under a heavy wooden plank. Malik's breath caught. Tears welled in the puppy's big, frightened eyes as it whimpered again, struggling to move. Without a second thought, Malik dropped his backpack and ran to the little creature. "Hang in there, little guy," he whispered, crouching beside it. The puppy let out a weak yelp, its chest rising and falling rapidly. Malik gritted his teeth and grabbed the wooden plank. He pulled, but it wouldn't budge. It was heavier than he expected. He adjusted his stance, planting his feet firmly on the uneven ground. His fingers curled around the edge of the plank, his knuckles turning white. He tried again, this time using every ounce of strength he had. The plank shifted, just a little. The puppy let out another cry, its tiny paw still trapped. Malik's arms burned, his fingers trembling from the strain, but he refused to give up. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and pulled with everything he had. The plank moved, just enough. The puppy let out a squeaky yelp and wriggled free. Malik fell back onto the ground panting, but his exhaustion vanished the second the little pup jumped into his arms. It licked his face frantically, its tiny tail wagging so hard it looked like a blur. Malik laughed, hugging the puppy close. "You're okay now, buddy. You're safe." He had no idea that this one small act of kindness would change his life forever. Malik carefully carried the tiny, trembling puppy home, holding it against his chest as if it were the most precious thing in the world. His little legs moved quickly, his heart still racing from the rescue. He had never saved a life before, but something about the way the puppy clung to him, its soft body warm and trusting, made him feel like he had done something truly important. When he stepped through the door, his mother, Ms. Johnson, turned from the kitchen, her eyes widening at the sight of the mud-covered puppy nestled in his arms. "Malik," she sighed, crossing her arms. "What is that?" Malik bit his lip, rocking on his heels. "A puppy. He was trapped under a bunch of junk in the alley. I couldn't just leave him there." Ms. Johnson exhaled, shaking her head, but there was a softness in her eyes. She took a step closer, watching as Malik set the puppy gently on a towel he had grabbed from the bathroom. The little creature whimpered, but its tail wagged ever so slightly. Malik went to work immediately, grabbing a damp rag and carefully wiping the dirt from its tiny fur. He made sure to be extra gentle around the injured paw, his small fingers moving with care. He then filled a small bowl with water and placed it in front of the pup. The puppy lapped it up eagerly, its little pink tongue flicking out, as if thanking him. Ms. Johnson watched, her arms still crossed, but a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "You have the biggest heart, Malik," she said, kneeling beside him. "But you know we can't keep him." The words hit him like a punch to the stomach. He knew she was right. Their apartment complex didn't allow pets. They could barely afford extra expenses as it was. Malik's shoulders slumped. "I know," he murmured, running a hand gently over the puppy's soft fur. Seeing his disappointment, Ms. Johnson placed a reassuring hand on his back. "We'll find him a good home," she promised, "but tonight he can stay." Malik's face lit up. He nodded eagerly. "Thanks, Mom." That night, as he tucked the puppy into a warm old blanket, he whispered, "Don't worry, little guy, I'll find you a home." What Malik didn't know was that someone had been watching. Across the street, behind the curtains of a small townhouse, an elderly woman sat in her rocking chair, her phone clutched in her wrinkled hands. She had seen everything, the way Malik had risked himself to move that heavy plank, the way he had carried the shivering puppy home, the way he had shown nothing but pure kindness. She had filmed it all. With a soft smile, she typed out a caption and posted the video online. This little boy just risked everything to save a helpless puppy. If this isn't the kind of hero we need, I don't know what is. And with one click, Malik's life was about to change forever. The next morning, Malik stirred as the muffled sound of voices filtered through his window. At first, he thought it was just the usual morning traffic or kids playing outside. But as the voices grew louder, more excited, a strange feeling settled in his chest. Rubbing his sleepy eyes, he shuffled to the window, pushing aside the curtain. And then he froze. Outside, his front yard was packed. A crowd of reporters, neighbors, and animal rescue workers stood gathered, holding cameras, microphones, and even homemade signs that read, "Malik, the puppy hero." Malik's mouth fell open. What was happening? He turned and rushed out of his room, feet barely touching the floor as he bolted downstairs. He skidded to a stop in the kitchen, his heart hammering in his chest. His mother, Ms. Johnson, stood by the door, trying and failing to hide her smile. She turned to him, her eyes shining with something between pride and amusement. "Malik," she gestured toward the door, "there's someone here to see you." Confused, Malik hesitated. Slowly, he took a deep breath and stepped outside. The moment he appeared, the crowd erupted into applause. Malik's eyes widened as flashes from cameras lit up the early morning air. Reporters held out microphones, neighbors clapped, and children waved excitedly. He had never seen this many people in one place, especially not for him. And then, his gaze landed on someone in the center of the crowd. A tall, well-dressed man stood holding a leash. And at the end of that leash was the puppy. Malik's breath caught. The tiny dog's tail wagged furiously, and the moment it spotted him, it leaped forward, straining against the leash with excited yips. The man, smiling warmly, took a step forward. "Malik," he said, his voice gentle yet full of admiration. "I'm from the local animal shelter. We saw what you did, and we think you're a real hero." Malik swallowed hard, his eyes bouncing between the man and the puppy. A hero? Him? He glanced at his mother, who simply nodded, her smile growing wider. Whatever was about to happen next, Malik knew his life would never be the same again. As the cameras rolled, the shelter representative knelt in front of Malik, his warm smile radiating through the morning air. The little puppy, still tugging excitedly at the leash, let out a happy bark, as if sensing that something special was about to happen. "This little guy wouldn't be alive if it weren't for you," the man said, his voice filled with admiration. "And after seeing how much you care, we wanted to make sure he found a home with someone who truly loves him." Malik's heart pounded in his chest. His fingers curled into the fabric of his hoodie as he tried to process the man's words. Was he saying what Malik thought he was saying? "Wait, are you saying—" Malik's voice was barely a whisper, hope flickering in his wide eyes. The man nodded, his smile growing. "The shelter pulled some strings with your apartment management. They've agreed to make an exception. This puppy is officially yours." For a second, everything felt still. Malik could hardly believe his ears. Then, the crowd erupted in cheers. Neighbors clapped, reporters grinned, and kids jumped up and down, chanting his name. Malik dropped to his knees, his breath catching in his throat as he wrapped his arms around the tiny dog. The puppy wiggled excitedly, its tail wagging so fast it was a blur. "I get to keep you?" Malik whispered, his voice trembling. The puppy responded by licking his face frantically, letting out excited yips. Malik laughed through his happy tears, hugging his new best friend even tighter. Miss Johnson stood by the door, wiping away a tear, pride shining in her eyes. And just when Malik thought the day couldn't get any better, a news reporter stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Malik, you're a hero," she said with a knowing smile. "And we have one more surprise for you." Before Malik could ask, the sound of a car pulling up turned everyone's attention toward the street. Not just any car, a sleek black limousine. The driver stepped out, walked to the back, and opened the door. Malik's eyes went wide as a tall, athletic figure stepped out, flashing a familiar grin. The crowd gasped in recognition. It was his favorite athlete, the one whose jersey Malik had saved up for, the one whose posters covered his bedroom walls. The man walked straight up to Malik and offered a handshake. "Heard you're the bravest kid in town," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Malik's mouth dropped open. This couldn't be real. The athlete crouched to meet Malik's stunned gaze, ruffling the puppy's ears. "We wanted to thank you for reminding us that kindness matters," he continued. "So, I've arranged something special. How would you like to come to our next game and walk onto the field with the team?" Malik's head spun. The cheers around him grew louder, the excitement reaching a fever pitch. The entire world seemed to be chanting his name. This wasn't just a day he'd never forget. It was the beginning of something bigger than he could have ever imagined. The stadium lights blazed overhead, illuminating the massive crowd that filled every seat. The electric buzz of excitement pulsed through the air as fans eagerly awaited the start of the game. But tonight, before the players took the field, there was someone else the world needed to celebrate. Standing at the edge of the tunnel, Malik's heart pounded in his chest as he clutched his puppy tightly. The little dog, now clean and healthy, licked his chin, sensing his nerves. His mother, Miss Johnson, stood beside him, tears shimmering in her eyes. "You deserve this, baby," she whispered, squeezing his shoulder. "Enjoy every second." The stadium announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, echoing over the roaring crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin tonight's game, we want to take a moment to honor a true hero." Malik's breath hitched. This young man showed us all what kindness truly means. When he saw a helpless puppy in danger, he didn't hesitate. He risked everything to save a life. And in doing so, he reminded us that real heroes don't wear capes. They simply have big hearts. The crowd erupted in applause, cheers shaking the entire stadium. Malik's eyes widened as the athlete he idolized stepped forward, grinning down at him. He gestured toward the field. "Come on, champ. This moment belongs to you." The tunnel opened. Malik took a deep breath and stepped onto the field. The roar of the crowd became deafening. Thousands of fans stood, clapping, chanting his name. Some held signs with "Malik, the puppy hero." Others waved, beaming with admiration. For the first time in his life, Malik felt like he was truly seen. His feet moved as if floating, carrying him to the center of the field. The puppy squirmed in his arms, yipping happily. Malik looked up at the massive screen above the stadium, where a video of his rescue played for all to see. The moment he lifted that heavy wooden plank, the way he cradled the puppy, refusing to let it suffer. Tears welled in his eyes. He had just been an ordinary kid yesterday, but today, he was a hero. The athlete placed a hand on his shoulder. "The world needs more people like you, Malik." The final cheer rose to the sky, sealing this moment forever. Later that night, Malik lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his heart still racing from everything that had happened. The excitement, the cheers, the cameras, it had all been like a dream, but the warm little body curled up beside him, snuggled under his arm, reminded him that it had all been real. The puppy let out a sleepy sigh, its tiny paws twitching as if dreaming. Malik gently ran his fingers over its soft fur, feeling a sense of comfort he had never known before. He smiled and whispered, Looks like you found your forever home." The puppy let out a small, happy whimper, pressing its nose against his chest. A soft knock at the door made Malik turn. Ms. Johnson stepped inside, her eyes filled with warmth. She sat on the edge of his bed, brushing his curls with her fingers like she had done when he was younger. "You know," she said gently, "not everyone gets a moment like this, to see the world appreciate the goodness in them." Malik looked up at her, his eyes wide. "I didn't do it for that, Mom." Ms. Johnson's smile deepened. "I know, baby. That's what makes it so special." She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "You showed the world that being kind makes a difference, and now the world is showing you how much that matters." Malik let out a deep breath, his body finally relaxing. Everything had changed, but somehow he felt more like himself than ever before. He pulled the blanket higher, wrapping the puppy in its warmth. Outside his window, the city lights twinkled in the distance, reflecting endless possibilities. Tomorrow, there would be more news stories, more people wanting to talk to him. But for now, he was just a kid with his best friend beside him. The puppy let out a small yawn, its tail wagging once before it drifted into peaceful sleep. Malik smiled as his own eyes fluttered shut. Because sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness lead to the biggest miracles.